My parents saw how much I hated high school, and I was lucky enough that they gave me a year to try to figure something out. You have a year, and you either find something that you start making a full-time income, or you have to go into school. Yeah, so within just a little over a year into getting into e-commerce, I got like a $41,000 distribution in 1 month. I thought I was on the top of the world, man.
In order in those marketing materials to make people really like want to take a response, I guess.
Basically, you're going to need to develop a deep understanding of your market and what they want. And then once you realize what they want, you can start testing angles that relate to that part of what they want. The first thing I should have hired out was easily replaceable. Saved me an incredible amount of time, easily 20 hours a week.
Do you see any other way of succeeding? Like, for others who hasn't learned like how to maybe edit videos?
If you're new to business,
Hello， 欢迎收看这一集的卖艺不卖身，我是瑞博阿贝。很难想象，我们经营 Transpace 这个品牌顾问公司，专门帮助客户打造亚马逊，大概已经8、9年了吧。但是去年是我第一次实际本人到了美国的领土，伟大的川普所掌控的领土啊，川普。太棒了，好，因为他现在当选嘛，所以我们要这个尽力的这个舔一下。在这个美国的过程当中，其实我们不是去玩我们是去跟顾问学习也是学习如何成为一个更好的顾问，能够帮助我们的客人这样子。那在这过程当中呢，我们就会遇到一些其他的创业者，其中令我一个非常印象深刻的呢，是一位非常年轻22岁的创业者，他自己本身也是做电商，大概做3年吧，现在1年的营收但是3亿5千万台币。3亿5千万台币是什么概念就是如果你抓获利是2成的话，大概就是7千万的获利。那7千万的获利呢，在品牌出售的时候，大概可能至少保守的话有3倍的价值。就是你1年赚7千万，那有人要购买你的品牌的话，他可能说好，那接下来的3年的利润我全包了，我扛这个风险，我就付给你2.1亿，7千万乘3嘛，2.1亿。然后我买下你的品牌，然后你离开，然后我希望他接下来不是只赚3年的7千万是赚10年的7千万，那我的投资就可以回收。所以呢，代表什么？3年的时间呢，可能打造出了一个2.1亿价值的资产。而他从多少钱开始呢？从0元。为什么要从0元开始？他做的是一个 drop shipping 的模式。drop shipping 呢，就是说他不用有实体的库存，他所有的库存呢都是在中国大陆、广东、深圳由一个出货的这个人帮他准备的当然，他现在货量比较大的时候，他可能自己要先预留一些库存所以有一点点的这个库存的风险包含退货等等，他自己要处理。那这样的模式呢，让他能够在3年的时间到达这个规模所以遇到他的时候，我就非常的惊讶，因为22岁的时候，我好像才大学刚毕业然后都还没有一个非常的明确的方向。可是这位仁兄他就已经累积了2.1亿的资产。遇到他之后，我就特别希望能够让他也可以分享一下他的创业经验。对比现在 YouTube 上面我们看到很多就是国外的一些访谈也好，都是 AI 然后翻译人家的阿北不屑做这种事所以我就亲自的去访问他，把这个内容跟大家分享，包含他到底怎么开始的，他一开始没有经验的时候，他怎么去透过跟认识的人加入他们的公司，也是做电商的，去学习了他们的模式，然后接下来自己在创业创业的过程当中，怎么从一个个人的创业者，透过不断的选品测试、选市场去测试，最后找到了他现在这个成功的产品，打造了这个品牌。那在过程当中呢，怎么也利用远端管理，他大部分的团队呢都在菲律宾，但是呢，他也意识到这个过程当中有一些状况，他是不能够只有菲律宾的团队，他现在在加拿大也有自己的一个外包的团队。那你可以听到他在外包的事情上面，他怎么做选择的，有经验没经验，不同的岗位上面选择什么样子的人，对他的成长更有帮助。那当然听到这个过程当中呢，你可能会想说那他到底是卖什么商品？很抱歉，这个是他私底下都有展示给我看的，所以我对他的这个数据100%保证是真实的数据 他的后台 Shopify 开给我看，给我开广告，他也是很 open 啊。因为我们在聊的时候，大家都是非常的开放的。但是因为这个要变成一个全部的人都看得到的 podcast 的时候，他也会担心他也不希望每一个人就全部都觉得说，哇，原来加拿大小哥哥这么好赚我们也要跟他做一模一样的东西，抢他的市场，他也会担心。像这样子的状况，所以这是我觉得唯一比较可惜因为大部分我们在录这个 podcast 的时候都是超级 open 包含我们之前成功的卖家上来分享，也都是非常的开放的。说老实的，我觉得 dropshipping 呢，它的模式本身还是比较脆弱一点点，所以它在这个领域比较低调。好了，那废话不多说，我们就进入今天的访谈内容吧。
All right, awesome. Josh, super excited to speaking with you. I met you in Colorado. Wasn't expecting an ecom dude to be there because it was kind of like an event for consultant, but I was super excited to have met you, and now you're on the show. Can you tell my audience what you do, basically?
Sure. So super excited to be here as well. And I've been doing ecom for the last 4.5 years. The first 3 years of that, I worked for a small ecom company, ran multiple brands, exited one, started even more. And then I left that about 1.5 years ago, which is when I started the brand that I'm currently running. And it's going great. We're actually looking to exit soon if we can get the number that we're looking for. And leading up to that, we're still continuing to grow, still bringing on more team members, putting new systems in place, etc. So we're treating it the exact same way as if we weren't selling, but if we get the number we want, we will sell.
I'm super excited. Well, you look super young. So I guess, people are thinking, well, how old is the guy who's been doing that for 4 years? Can you tell people when you started?
Yeah, so I started right before I turned 18, about 2 months before turning 18. I'm 22 now. And yeah, man, it's been great. I'm happy that I got into it so early.
How did you get into it? I guess when I was 18, I was kind of still in college. I just got into university or something.
Do you want the long story or the short story?
Oh, I love long stuff. Long story,
Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay, we'll do the long story. So throughout high school, I definitely wasn't the most motivated, you could say, at least when it came to school. And I think that came through me realizing that I don't want to have the exact same life that everyone has where they can only have 2 weeks of vacation. They can't get the things that they want. They can't do the things that they want, et cetera, et cetera. That led me to realizing, hey, what I'm doing at school doesn't really matter because I know that's not going to get me where I want to be.
Okay.
At the same time, I wasn't really doing good in school at all anyways. Yeah. So yeah, it was kind of funny. There wasn't really the work ethic in terms of schoolwork, yet at the same time, I was going to the gym. I started back in, grade 8, and I've been lifting ever since. My work ethic there was incredible. And my work ethic in business, when I eventually got into business 4 years later, was incredible as well because it's something that I actually knew would take me to where I wanted, and I just couldn't get enough. I just wanted to work, and I wanted to work a lot. But in terms of your question, how I got in, at the end of high school, so right when I graduated, my parents saw how much I hated high school, and I was lucky enough that they gave me a year to try to figure something out. So it's either you have a year and you either find something that you start making a full-time income, or you have to go into school. So right out of high school, I still had this sort of lazy mentality, right? I didn't have the best work ethic when it came to school or just work in general. I wouldn't say work in general, actually, because I had 2 jobs prior and I always tried to be the absolute best I could. But it definitely still had a lazy aspect to me. And with that, my first idea was to patent ideas that I had and then license them to companies. So just bare minimum effort, just thinking of ideas. And lawyers normally have their first consultation free, right?
Yep.
So I found the top lawyer in Toronto. I live in Toronto. And I got all excited. The appointment was like a week from that time, right? The whole week I was thinking about all the Lambos I'd buy, all the houses, all the vacations, etc. So excited. Put on my fanciest clothes, which was my school uniform at the time with my running shoes. And I went into this lawyer's office, like one of the top lawyers in Toronto, and had my dreams crushed. So from there, because you can't patent novel ideas and just in general, it just never would have worked. But anyways.
Tell me one idea you had back then. Do you still remember any of those ideas?
I remember it, man. I thought it was the best idea in the world at the time. You know Mio, that stuff you can squirt in water. So this was when everything got legalized, like weed and stuff in Canada. So I thought, why don't we just make THC version of that? Yeah, that was my genius idea.
That was like pretty smart. It could still be a thing, actually.
I mean, I don't think it's a horrible idea, but yeah. Anyways, from there, got into YouTube. And at that time, I was I wouldn't say socially awkward, but I was definitely very shy. And with that, I started a YouTube channel where my friends and I would work out in the gym. And
cool.
It was sort of like a powerlifting / comedy channel.
Okay.
It was fun. I loved it, but it just wasn't really getting to where I wanted it to get to fast enough. I was being impatient. I also only had this 1 year, so, freaking out a bit. So I decided to transition it to pranks, which I absolutely hated. I'd have to hype myself up for hours for those, but I thought that's what would get me to my goal. So I would literally go out in public and sing songs or scream or go do approaches to people with awkward things, and hated it, but thought that would work. And that ended up not working. Had a few months left, so looked up how to make money online, found e-commerce, and started a store. Got banned instantly off Facebook. So I kept trying with Snapchat ads. Lots of failure, but one thing that kept me going was earlier on, maybe like a month before that, I saw this video of someone in e-com, and they seemed, to not put it badly, they just didn't seem all that smart, yet they were making what seemed to me to be crazy amounts of money. I thought, hey, if this guy can do it, so can I. Yeah. And I went and just Snapchat ads with that belief of that, hey, I can make it work. If this guy's doing it, I can definitely do it. I can figure it out. It's possible. And I think that's all it really comes down to, just knowing that it's possible. Kept doing that, and Snapchat ads were very close to cracking it, but never did. Fortunately, though, I was able to get another Facebook account. And then from that, I think my first month with Facebook, I made like $8,000 profit. And that was incredible. That was life-changing. Soon after that, I started working for a small e-com company, the one that I mentioned before, and started running their brands basically from zero. I think they were doing like $4,000 revenue a month.
$4,000 in revenue, and they wanted to hire an employee.
Yeah, I can go into the business model later if you want.
Okay, cool. That's very interesting. Yeah.
Within the first year or 11 months, we scaled that to 500 something thousand a month.
Whoa.
And yeah, so within a year of, and I had equity in that, right?
Okay.
So
it's not just a employment only. It was kind of more like a partnership.
Sort of, yeah.
Okay.
25%. So within just a little over a year into getting into e-commerce, I got like a $41,000 distribution in 1 month, and I thought, I thought I was on the top of the world, man. Yeah.
Well, if somebody gave me 41,000 today, I would still feel like it's the top of the world.
Yeah, no, that was crazy. I went from making like a few $100s a month in my job in high school to just a little over a year later making up to 41,000 a month. And yeah, that was quite incredible.
I love what you said, though. It's knowing that it's possible, right? Because if you don't believe that, you wouldn't just keep trying. So first, building that belief is the thing. Can you tell me a little bit more about the business? How those partnership came about? What was the goal? How did you guys execute the blueprint?
Right. So the whole idea here was that these guys are, one is 3 years older than me. The other is 5 years older than me. And they both had experience in business prior. One of them was the more like digital nomad lifestyle, where he's living in a place for 4 months or so at a time. And their whole idea was, let's bring someone on who will do everything in terms of marketing. So, or not in terms of marketing, everything in terms of
everything
except for logistics, financial, and team management, because there were other people that came on eventually.
Yep.
It was kind of like a genius with 1,000 arms model, where people worked under me to help support me, and then I reported to them, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah.
To have
so they literally found like a founder, basically. So I'm guessing they had the resources, the money to support it. Yeah. Okay. They literally founded like a residence entrepreneur within their little venture.
Yeah, and then that gave them, so their contribution was money and experience. My contribution was all my time and another contribution of theirs was teaching me a lot of things. Like life-changing stuff. That definitely changed my life. They're my best friends to this day. But their goal was to just make money while they had not minimal involvement, but a lot of freedom to live the life that they wanted. And yeah, it worked out very well for all of us.
Right.
I don't regret it at all. And if I were to do it again, I would do the exact same thing.
How did they find you? Because I had previous experiences, basically. It's slightly different. So basically, I had employees in my team, right? So pretty similar. I think you eventually will tell the story where you have a lot of employees in the Philippines. So I did last year as well. So I was like, okay, these three guys look pretty hardworking. They look, they seem smart. Let me try to get him to start a business and let me try to fund it. And it didn't really work out. I think the incentives were quite different. Maybe I didn't have the agreements worked out well, like, in terms of equity, partnership, and maybe the idea itself. So how did they find you? Was it like through an application? How did you come across the opportunity?
So I did leave a little bit out of the story, I guess, just to sort of streamline it. But I came across their course because they were selling courses as well. Came across one of their entry-level courses around the time that I first started into ecom, like right after my Facebook account got banned or so. And they were teaching just direct response marketing fundamentals, which is something that I was dedicating like hours every single day to. I read so many direct response, copywriting, marketing psychology in general books at the same time.
Yep.
But anyways, yeah, I was in the course and I was on their email list. So once I got this email where it's like, hey, I'm at the airport right now, waiting for a flight, answering questions for the next 30 minutes. So I sent in a question and we started emailing back and forth for a little bit. And then one day he sent this email to the list because I was on an email list, right? And they send emails every week, multiple emails. One of the emails was, hey, this is a new sales page that we just wrote for a product that we're introducing, which at the time I thought was extremely high ticket. It was like $4,000 or $5,000. And the sales page was huge. It was probably took me 40 minutes to read it. And I'm not a slow reader. I'm not a fast reader, but I'm not a slow reader. And they sent this email saying, hey, here's our new sales page. Read the entire thing, break down what we've done here, and then send it to us. And I did that. It took me probably 2 hours in total, reading it, breaking it down, etc. Sent that in, and he replied. I don't remember the reply, but the one thing that I do remember was like, you're the only person on this email list. And there was thousands of people on there who did this. And I was kind of shocked because I thought, hey, people are spending thousands of dollars with them and they wouldn't do this. Now I understand, but at the time I didn't. Because I just was so hungry to learn and I didn't really have time responsibilities elsewhere rather than learning how to do this business and going to the gym. So shortly after that, probably a week later, he's like, let's hop on a call. And there he pitched me.
Because you were special. You're right. I'm surprised you did it, actually.
Right now, I'm not surprised that I did it looking back. However, I would be surprised if I did it now. But I can't explain to you how bad I wanted it. Yeah. I would have done anything at that point. And to me, at that level, it shocked me that no one else would do it. Now I totally understand no one would do that. But at that time, my mind was blown that no one else did it.
That every opportunity was a good opportunity. So obviously you really stood out and you guys probably had a chat and they were like, well, what do you do? And you're like, well, e-com. Okay, let's get you to do some e-com stuff.
Not exactly. It was more so they knew what I was doing, right? Because we were talking back and forth. It was also just a pitch of, hey, you know what? You're starting out. You seem to have a lot of potential.
Right.
We want to teach you, give you equity, pay you. You get to learn with our money. And in return, we get the majority of...
Were they doing this with a few founders, or were you the only kind of person in the batch, basically?
I was the only person. So the team started with them too, and then me. That's how everything started. There was like 1 or 2 VAs answering customer support emails, and then there was also a designer. Actually, he came on much later.
Right.
Yeah, so it was just us 3. And then slowly a team built around me, which was a product sourcing guy, a designer, / video editor. So graphic design and video editor. And then they wanted to scale. And at the time, I mean, yes, they had prior experience in business, but they were young too. Now they're running a business even larger than mine. like after we split up, they changed their business model and it's worked very well for both of us, the whole split. But anyways, they tried to hire another me. That was their way of scaling. That did not work. And they were actually about to fire him right before I left. So they were sort of starting to realize this model isn't scalable.
So you basically learned e-commerce just watching YouTube videos and trying to implement, and probably had a course in marketing stuff, because I guess you didn't take marketing courses while back in college. How did you learn all the skills necessary, and what do you think are the most essential skills that you must be able to do yourself as an e-commerce or dropshipping founder, that you can't really delegate? Like, you must be good at those things, otherwise it's going to be difficult for you to kind of start.
Gotcha. Definitely a stacked question.
A lot of questions. I'm a person of curiosity.
All good. First thing was learning. Yes, through YouTube videos, but that was more e-commerce specific stuff, like, hey, how do I make a store? How do I do this stuff? A lot of my learning was through books, direct response marketing books, like I mentioned before, direct response marketing books, psychology books, etc., copywriting books, stuff like that. And then I also learned from experience, just literally using their money to test my ideas, and also having them mentor me. And then also their one course. I didn't take any other courses up until later. And yeah, so that's where I learned a whole lot of stuff that I know now. And then in terms of your second question, it depends on what stage you're in. I know that the most fundamental skill of e-commerce, I mean, what are we really doing? We're just marketing, right? So the most basic skill that every single person in e-commerce needs to know, whether you are starting from zero or you are managing a team of 50 people, you need to understand direct response marketing at the beginning, because that's how you're going to make money. Later on, because that's how you're going to judge whether your team knows what they're doing or not, or the agencies, etc. So direct response marketing is the most fundamental skill that you need to know. You will not succeed. I can't say you will not succeed, because you could go into a partnership or something, but you won't succeed alone. And if you do, you'll be short-lived, or you're very lucky. 99.99% of people will not succeed without a very deep understanding of direct response marketing. And this is what I see separates a lot of people who sort of make it big, and then don't make it at all. A very deep understanding of direct response marketing is essential in the beginning to the end. In the beginning, that's all is really needed. You don't really need anything else. I mean, basic business knowledge and basic accounting skills. And by basic accounting skills, I mean, you know how to put a P&L together, and you know how to not spend company money recklessly, which is something I learned the hard way. But anyways, in later stages, as the company evolves, if you're the owner, you'll need to learn leadership, you'll need to learn management, etc. But yeah, direct response marketing is the most important thing. And then everything else just becomes business skills. I don't think you need to know how to source products, just a basic understanding. It also depends on the model you're in, because if you're in Amazon, you probably need to know how to source products. If you're Shopify dropshipping, you don't really need to know. You know how to find an agent. If you know how to find an agent, there you go. And then you can argue like, oh, well, how do you know the agent's doing the right thing or not? I mean, this is where basic level of sourcing knowledge comes in. However, stuff with direct response marketing, that needs to be very deep understanding.
That's great. For those who aren't really aware of what direct response marketing is, maybe using your first product that you succeed with your previous partnership as an example, like what kind of direct response marketing skills and knowledge did you apply to make that product successful?
Gotcha. I think we should probably take a step back if it's people who don't understand what direct response is. So you definitely know, but maybe parts of your audience, there's brand awareness sort of marketing where it's like you'll see Coca-Cola and stuff, and then there's direct response marketing, which can also be on TV and such. But I guess boil down the definition of direct response marketing is that you are showing someone an ad or a marketing message to get them to respond directly then and there, or later on in the funnel. But just the basic explanation is, hey, like let's say you see a mail order ad. The whole point of that is to get you to buy then and there. In terms of how we applied direct response fundamentals to the first brand that we ever ran together, I don't know if I can answer that specifically for that brand. I can answer it for a brand that I ran before. And the reason I don't know is because there was an NDA and such signed for the sale of that business, because that was the business that we sold. And I don't know if that is still effective. I think it was a 2-year agreement, but I could be wrong. I don't know. But anyways, I can talk about something that I sold in the beginning, which is a store that I started, magnetic charging cables. And the way we applied direct, it's a hard question to answer, the way we applied direct response marketing to it. Well, all of our ads would lead to a direct response, as in our ads would try to get them to the landing page, and then the landing page would try to sell them. I feel like that's a very surface level answer. Is that what you're looking for? It doesn't really seem like it.
Well, let me put it this way, right? So obviously, when you were selling magnetic charging cables, there were definitely a lot of it. So there were competitions. I'm sure people have seen ads all over, right? So like, what do you have to do in order in those marketing materials to make people really like want to take a response, I guess?
Basically, first you're going to define you're going to develop a deep understanding of your market and what they want. And then once you realize what they want, you can start testing angles that relate to that part of what they want. First, you have to find out your market. Then you have to find out what your market wants. And then you can start taking your product. Your product might have like 100 different angles, and then just seeing what angles align with what they want.
Yep.
Does that sort of answer the question? Is that okay? Cool. Yeah. And then so you have like, let's say 10 angles. Out of 100 angles, there's 10 angles that align with what your market wants. You test those 10. 2 or 3 of them are going to work. And then you start iterating off of those, right? And that pretty much gets you into what your winning messaging is for that offer to that market. And you can keep running that for, I mean, right now, our current brand, we've done, I think, 15 million Canadian since starting with basically the same messaging. So you can run it for a while. It depends on the TAM, right? I mean, our current brand has a huge TAM. Magnetic charging cables also has a huge TAM. So you could run an angle for a very long time, but then when that angle fatigues, you have 2 or 3 other ones that were proven. You can try one of those, or you can start going into different, this is going to be a little bit more advanced, like different sophistication levels, different market awareness levels, or you can just like go into a completely different market, find what that market wants from your product, and then use new angles, right? There's a whole bunch of different ways to keep a brand going, but that's like more advanced. At the beginning, it's just finding the market, finding out what the market wants, and then taking or choosing which angle of that product you want to run with. If that makes sense, that's just a basic framework, I'd say, to find product market fit. Again, I don't know if that's answering your question. It's a tricky one.
No, it's great. But like, how do you find those angles, right? I guess like as a marketer, maybe there are people who are just very intuitive about it. But like to say, for example, I'm just starting out. I'm like, well, I look at magnetic cable, I'm like, well, it charges. It's probably easy to charge. How do you actually find like, the things that maybe other brands aren't talking about as much as what you're trying to position it as?
So definitely do think it's intuitive, especially over time. But in the beginning, and even in later stages, just through market research, you'll find this. And what I mean by that is you can go through Amazon reviews, right? You probably do this yourself. Go through Amazon reviews, and you can see what's coming up most commonly. First, you'll want to see like what kind of people are buying, but just in the simplest form, you can go through what people are saying, what people are talking about. Let's say for the magnetic charging cables, the most commonly talked about thing is convenience of charging in the car, saving time charging, and not tripping over your charging cable. Let's say those are the 3 most common things. Those are the first 3 angles you're going to test. And one of those is going to hit. Maybe it won't, maybe it will. If it doesn't hit, you can go back and look at other angles. That's one way to do it. You can go and research in other places too. But where to find angles? Just through market research, which can be done in a multitude of different places.
Right. So once you have an angle, do you then immediately go and try to make an ad based on an angle that you want to test? And if you do, like how do you go about producing ad creatives, I guess?
So more tactically, the landing page for a new offer that we're running will normally be more general. It won't follow. It depends on what kind of market we're trying to get into, like the sophistication level and awareness level.
Right.
But normally, most things I run are in like a solution aware market, or the ad at least brings them to like solution aware, product aware. So the landing page is normally very general product aware landing pages. Does that make sense? So it's just talking about the product, talking about the features and benefits, just selling the product to someone who already knows they want the product. The landing page is normally very general. It doesn't follow a specific angle. The ads, however, will follow specific angles. And to answer your question before, yes, once I have an angle that I want to test, I'll normally test with 3 angles if I'm launching a new offer, and then go from there. I'll have those 3 angles, and then I'll make like 3 sets of ads for each angle, 3 sets of copies, etc. But that's just a more tactical answer there. It can be tested however you want. The things that I wouldn't change, though, are the general product aware landing page and testing multiple angles with ads. How you test them, it's up to you. This is the way I did it. There's many ways to do it. It's like you see those videos on YouTube or whatever, and it's like, oh, how did you? There's like a guy who goes to people in their cars. How did you get this car? Mm-hmm. And there's so many nice cars. There's so many different ways of doing it, but they all have the same thing. You know what I mean? So the only thing that doesn't change is product aware landing page and different angles in your ads.
Right. Cool. So let's talk about your current brand now. Last time I heard it, you're kind of on track to do crazy numbers. Can you talk about that brand and what you just mentioned that you've done 50 million Canadian dollars so far. What are you doing these days? What are you on track to do this year?
Okay, so I just pulled this up now. It's 15.2 million. And for this year, we've done 7.123 million.
Oh, you've done 7 million already this year, so it's only May.
Yeah, so we're on track for about 21 million this year. If we don't grow, but we will grow, I'm thinking around 30 million or more.
And are you able to tell the audience what the store is?
I prefer not to.
Okay.
Definitely would rather keep that confidential, but it is a very large TAM. It's a problem-solving product, which, I mean, every product solves a problem, really. Well, not every, but this year, or last year was a lot of the groundwork. This year, again, is more groundwork.
You only started last year, right? If you're kind of going back, it was like...
Yeah, December 22.
December 22.
So we had a full year, and then now we're just January, February, March, April of this year.
Right.
So 1 year, 5 months. My role has changed a lot, especially since I would say around December, and definitely made a lot of mistakes along the way. Definitely can talk about those and just different time periods. But yeah, that's the brand.
Let's go back to the starting point. So you sold the brand. You had equity in a partnership. So obviously you got some resources now, and you got some experiences now. I mean, when that happens, like, I guess a lot of people would think maybe I'll start something different. I'll start something new. What were you thinking back then? Or did you maybe take a break, traveled a bit? Like, you know, after you got that money, what was your next kind of step?
After we exited, I was still with them for another 2 years, or another year and a half. Thank you. For another year and a half. And the day after we exited, we started testing new brands. The day after, nothing changed. Thinking there was, it wasn't a life-changing amount of money. I think I can say the sale price, or I can just roughly say it. It was between 1.4 and 1.6 million. So it wasn't huge when split. That's Canadian, by the way, not US, when split between 3 people. So it wasn't life-changing money. I mean, it wasn't life-changing money. For, what was I? I was 20 years old. It was pretty life-changing. But yeah, we started brands right away. And the thinking there was just, hey, you know what? We love doing this. There's nothing to take a break from. There's no reason to change business model because this is already proven, and we already have 2 years of experience, or 2.5 years at that point. So we'll just keep compounding that. And when I left, it was the same thinking. It was, I have this experience. I know e-com works, and it's going to keep compounding. So I just started a new brand here. When I exit this, probably exact same thing. Actually, I'm not sure, because it's going to be a bigger exit. And it's also going to be an exit where I'm involved. I was not involved in the sale process before. So I'm not sure what it's going to look like. So I don't think I'm going to start a new brand the day after the exit. Or maybe I will. I don't know. I really don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
There might be a small period where I'm just consulting for the new brand. So I don't know if I'm going to keep my team. I don't know what the deal will look like, right? If I don't keep my team and I'm consulting, I don't know if I'd start a new brand right away. It depends. I know not having cash flow will bother me, but also having considerably more money in my bank account will be helpful. But yeah, it's a hard question to answer.
So basically, immediately after the first exit, you're like, oh, let's just continue doing it. So this time you decided to do just on your own, right? Because you had the experiences and the money to do it. So you basically just go back and start testing. Is that the first thing every kind of e-commerce dropshipper do? Like, did you ever think about kind of do it differently? Because I guess in the dropshipping model, maybe there were things that you believe they're advantageous, right? They're good. Like you just change products really quickly. Did you also maybe think about developing your own products? Like what was kind of going through your mind when you restarted?
The strategy was nearly the same. I'd say about 90% the same. The only difference was at the time, I never understood why they would take things slow. I hated working slow. If there was something that I wanted done myself, I would do it the same day, even if it took me all day. So my speed of implementation was incredibly high. And my error ratio was also very high because of this. So I never understood why they were so slow. And this is one thing that, so I would never say that there was anything bad about the team. There were things I didn't like, but they weren't deal breakers. There were also things that I liked, and the things I liked massively outweighed it. The only reason I left really was because I realized it wasn't truly what I wanted when I first started in business. I wanted to have freedom to do whatever I want, whenever I want. And working for someone doesn't allow that.
Yeah.
But one thing that did bother me when I was working there, not bother me enough to want to leave, but just bother me, was that they wanted to do things slower. They wanted to think things through, and I hated that. So that's pretty much the only change that I made then, which I think helped grow the company to be where it is now. But then at a point, I had to stop doing that. And I realized finally why they wanted to be slower, why they wanted to think things through. Because at a certain level, especially when you have people working for you, you can't pivot on a dime every single day and just, you can't do that. I mean, you could, but you're going to start breaking things and you lose momentum, etc. So yeah, 90% same strategy, 10% that. In terms of like product development versus dropshipping, no, I didn't think about product development. My thinking is maybe in the future, but my thinking now is that I only want to sell things that already have demand and that are already made. I don't want to come in and start risking time and money when I know I can make like 8 figures in a year just selling someone else's product. Of course, there is a brand around it. We have started customizing and stuff like that, but that came later on, way later on.
Right. So basically, the thinking is that there are enough opportunities where you can actually prove something already without having to do a lot of the pre-product development work. So do that first. Once you find the demand, you've proven your model, you've proven your skills, and then that's the next step to take.
Yep.
So when you started with this new product, like how many products did you have to go through in order to kind of find the success, I guess, that you see?
I tested quite a few low confidence ideas. I would say about 5 to 10.
Right.
Before this.
What were the criteria you're looking for when you pick the products?
At the beginning, there wasn't much of a criteria besides just solve a painful problem. But even then, I didn't really stick to that criteria.
Right.
The reason why I said these were low confidence ideas and these 5 to 10 ideas didn't work before is because I wasn't really going full focus on it because I didn't want it bad enough. I was still working for the other company at the time, and I was making at the time what I considered great money with them, and I just was complacent to not having a store running, and I didn't really care that much. But then when I wanted to leave, I realized, hey, this isn't a game anymore. You need to get something working. And that's when the criteria got stronger and I actually started following it. And that's when I also started putting actual time and thought into what I was doing, which is when I came across this. And it hit right away. I actually made 2 stores at the same time. Both of them were very high confidence ideas. One was just shut down though, because I wanted to put more focus in here. In terms of the actual criteria, what I was looking for was low refund rate, a gross markup of at least 3 times, a very large market, very painful problem. Doesn't need to be physical problem, just very large, painful problem. Small product. So if I ever want to bring it into the US, it's cheap, limited amount of SKUs. Once again, just easier on the logistical end. And I think that was about it for the criteria.
So I guess like there are a lot of people who are using like this data software to try to pick up trends. Like, did you follow any of those trends, or would you just kind of picking products based on what you see potentially can working rather than like seeing what's already selling hot, I guess? Because I remember like back back when I was kind of also interested, I never really kind of fully diving in dropshipping. There were like softwares that you go and you check like Alibaba sales and try to go from there. Is that something that you think could work or?
So one thing I missed in the criteria was that it has to be an evergreen market. And with that, no.
Not necessarily, yeah.
With these product finders, yes, I was actually using that in the beginning when I was not really dedicating a whole lot of time to actually trying to get something to work. But so I actually started the brands that these guys are running right now. Then I started 2 of the 4 new brands, and I started the most successful one that they're running right now. Every single good brand that I've ever run, I don't look for a product, I look for a market. And I try to plug in a product into that market. So I don't really use softwares. I did when I was being lazy. I don't think that's the way to go for it. I think the way you do this is find a market, and then you find a product that can solve this market's problem. Or you can have a product you really like and then find a new market for it if the current market that everyone is advertising to just doesn't really seem to work for you. So I think there's 2 approaches, but actually they're both equally good, I'd say.
Can you give an example of like, you have a product that you like and find a new market for it?
Okay, compression socks. So you can love the idea of compression socks. This is actually the other brand that I had. Compression socks are commonly sold to nurses or to, I don't know, construction
people
workers.
Who travel a lot, like on airplanes
and
stuff,
runners. Yeah. Compression socks are an amazing product, right? So let's say they're being sold to nurses. I can say, okay, nurses is a great market, by far the best market, better than travelers, better than everything, because nurses are going to keep buying. It's a more common problem. They're going to need multiple pairs, et cetera, right? You can go on forever listing why nurses. It's a bigger market as well. Actually, probably not bigger than people who travel. I don't know, whatever. But there's so many reasons why nurses are a better market. So I love the idea of compression socks. I want to sell to nurses, but I realize I probably can't get a big enough edge to do that because there are so many people in here. This has been around for so long, and it's going to take a lot more work. And I might not be able to have the same margins, et cetera, whatever, selling to nurses. I truly believe you can make it work if you wanted to sell to nurses, but so much more resistance.
Yeah.
So instead of that, I can think, what's another big market? Okay, women over 60 is a huge market. It's very broad. Why don't I do that? Or another one could be diabetics. It's another very painful problem, huge market. Same product, just angling it differently to a different market. So yeah, there's 2 ways to do that. You can either find products that have been sold for centuries or decades, or even years very successfully and then angle them to a new market, or you can find markets with very painful problems and just find products that fill in those solutions or fill in, that are solutions to their problems. I like both methods. I've made brands that are very successful with both. This current brand used the first one, market, and then solution. But
right. So when you have all the skills and you started the brands, did you do everything yourself? Like, starting out from like building the Shopify store, writing the copies, creating the first set of ads. Like, is that the approach that you went with?
Absolutely everything, man. I did everything except for customer service. I had 2 VAs working for me for something else, which I transitioned into customer service. One of them actually is now my head of ops. So that's cool. She really grew with the company. The other one is great. It's just that she was a little bit, her personality isn't the type of person who I'd want in a leadership role, but she's a great, like I'd say one of our best customer service reps easily. Yeah, I did everything in the beginning.
Did you see any other way of succeeding? Like, for others who hasn't learned like how to maybe edit videos and they were thinking, oh, maybe I can just outsource. Like, did you see ways for those people who can also succeed? Or do you feel like as a founder, like pretty much those important basic stuff that you pretty much have to go through yourself?
I think it depends on what other skills this person has already acquired.
Yep.
And what stage they're in their whole business journey and how much money they have and what their expectations are of business.
Yep.
I think for someone like me who had absolutely no business knowledge, but a lot of marketing knowledge, a lot of video editing skill, etc., because that's all I did for 3 years prior, it wouldn't make sense for me to hire a team right away, even though I had the money, because my edge was marketing, and why not get the brand going with me doing everything and then slowly bring on a team as I learn how to bring on a team rather than bring on a team for day one. It doesn't make sense for someone like me at that stage. Now it probably would. For someone who's coming into e-commerce or specifically dropshipping from another business model that's similar, if they already have business experience, I think they need to assess what their strengths and their weaknesses are. If their strength is team leadership, then maybe they should build a team right away. But if they lack some of the fundamental skills, knowing what is good and what is bad, it's going to be hard. Of course, they can find someone, like they can find a CMO who has a deep understanding. It's a very hard question. To answer that question, you need to know who the person is.
Yep.
I think it can make sense to do everything at the beginning. Here, this will be like a more black and white answer. If you're new to business, do everything at the beginning.
Yep.
If you're more seasoned and your current skill set aligns with bringing on a team right away, do so. If you're more seasoned in business and this is a completely new business, first off, I don't know why you're going into e-com unless your current vehicle is shit. It just doesn't make sense. Like if you've been in business for 5 years and you want to change your business model, that's a stupid move. At least in my opinion, unless it's a much better vehicle, which it might be. Like it might be you're selling lemonade on the side of the road and you want to go to e-com. That's a great idea. If you're starting from scratch and you have lots of business knowledge, I'd probably still do everything. The only way I wouldn't do everything is if it's like you have experience in a business that's very similar or you have lots of experience in e-com. So for example, right now, if I were to start a new brand, I would not do everything. I would hire a team from day one.
Right. So if you're starting building an brand, you will actually build a team to kind of fast track all this.
I probably wouldn't hire a creative director or CMO because I enjoy that and that's also part of my edge. Or maybe I would, but I'd hire out a head of ops, so like a COO. I'd hire head of customer support right away. I'd hire head of video editing right away, and then they would be responsible for hires underneath. So head of customer support would hire customer support people. Head of ops would hire ops people. Head of video editing would hire video editors. Stuff like that.
Right.
I would try to find the right people, like the best possible people before even starting.
That's a good point.
But also coming from my thoughts. This is not from experience. I've never built a company from a team right away. This is how I would do it based off of everything I learned in the last 4.5 years. Once I actually do it, that might change.
So when you first started, so obviously you got this product off the ground. You had a person who are doing customer service already. As you scale, like, what was the immediate bottleneck in terms of time that you needed to delegate next?
The first thing I should have hired out, which I actually did hire out, was video editing. Because while it was a very high value skill, or not high value skill, it was a very high value task, it was easily replaceable.
Okay.
And I hired that out, and that was good. That saved me an incredible amount of time. Easily 20 hours a week, just at current scale. And then once we scaled, it would have been much more, right?
Yep.
Content outsourcing, same exact thing, except that was a hire that was later on. Although that should have been done at the same time as video editing, but at the same time it shouldn't, because it would have been too much on my plate because I was just very new to hiring. But like in an ideal world, both of those roles would have been hired at the same time because they were about at the same level of like, this is very important, but it's easily replaceable. So those were my first hire was a video editor, and then it was a person to coordinate all the content.
Yep.
And
so the person that coordinates the content was the person who are like contacting creators, influencers? Yeah. Okay, got it.
So the scripts were being written by me, then they would bring them to the creator, and it just took out a bunch of very low level work. Next hire was a script writer, which was very difficult for me because I had so many things on my plate and I was still writing scripts myself. And this is where the transition phase from me doing absolutely everything to slowly turning into I do almost nothing in terms of groundwork. It was hard because I had to revise the scripts. I had to show him stuff. It probably also wasn't the best first hire for a copywriter because he was very new to copywriting. And I was just trying to get someone more affordably. He's still with me to this day. He's grown a lot, but at the time he was not the right hire for a copywriter. Should have hired someone with a lot more experience. But anyways, I was spending a lot of time revising his work, trying to coach him, make him better. Because I thought that's what you do. This was my first time running a business, right? And at the same time, I was also writing scripts, answering to a billion people, answering to the whole customer service team because I didn't have a head of customer support yet. So it was very stressful because I had so much workload with him. And instead of him, basically I was paying him to take time away from me and for me to teach him. So it was a horrible hire, but it turned out to be quite good later on. But at the time, it was a horrible hire. And I just didn't really realize it. I thought, hey, why do people have teams? This is so dumb. Like, I'm paying him to teach him and so he can waste my time. Not waste my time, but you know what I mean.
Take more out of my time, basically.
Yeah. My next hire was a promotion of my best customer support girl, be head of customer support. And that was such an incredible decision. There was a long transition phase where I still did a lot of the stuff that she was doing and we were overlapping, but that wasn't really her fault. Actually, it wasn't her fault at all. It was mine. It was like a lack of trust, not in trust as in, oh, she's going to blow up my business, but just lack in trust of how can this person do what I'm doing? And again, it's because I never ran a business before. In reality, she does what I was doing just as good, if not better, because she has full focus on it, right?
Yeah.
After that, I think it was just more of the same. So like another video editor,
Okay.
another script writer. Then around that time, I got a bookkeeper. This is when I started like trying to get things off my plate that I separated things between growth and maintenance tasks, and I was trying to get everything off my plate except for script writing. So I hired, bookkeeper, then some other staff to get stuff off my plate. I don't remember the exact roles. And then around Black Friday, I hired an ops guy who started reporting to the head of customer support, which became head of ops. And he started building out our international expansion stores and stuff like that. This was around November, December. And this is when we started to really scale in Q4. My role at the time was revising video ads, revising scripts, making scripts myself. The head of ops / customer support was reporting to me. And my main function was writing scripts because that was the highest value task, in my opinion, at the time. And then from January to April, my role has, since the beginning of the business, my role has been changing. But in January to April is where I actually completely removed myself from script writing and started putting in systems rather than me taking on more stuff myself. So like, for example, last month we implemented a CRO system. So now CRO is being tested every single day or every single month, not every day, every single month without my involvement at all, just because I created a system, hired someone, and that's it. Emails, same thing, brought on more script writers. I promoted my best video editor to head of video ads. So now everyone reports to him. Just removing myself from the day-to-day things that can be systematized and replaced using my core values and what I know works and turning into more of a leadership role. At one point I had 4 copywriters, and let's just call him number 4 was great. It was the best copywriter that I had, but this is where I started turning into more of like a business owner. I'd fired 2 people before this, but it was very obvious fires. They were just like super obvious reasons to fire them. But this one guy was our best copywriter. There was a problem, not a big problem, very minor problem, but he was late to deadlines. And weren't deadlines with me. The deadlines with me, he was always on time. But so we have something called daily ideas where our copywriters submit daily ideas in a group chat. And he would always be not by much, maybe by a couple hours, maybe by a day, not by much, but it was setting a bad example. And I talked to him twice about it, but he got better, but he wasn't at the point where he was on time every single time. This is the point where it started getting into more like, okay, this is a business. It's not really like a playground or something. I can either keep him and have his great ads, but then the team slowly dies, as in they see it's acceptable to do this. So that same day I hopped on a call and just got rid of him. And besides that, the team is very healthy. Everyone's fucking killers. Love them all. And I might have missed some stuff there. If there's anything you want to go into specifically, I'm happy to. But it's kind of taken there's been a huge change from day one to now. But I think I've also changed a lot as a person.
Yep.
And I love it, man.
It sounds like it, right? Because I felt that was a very difficult decision to make. Because I guess you're like, you're relatively young and a very nice person, very open. So I guess people might think that you're also just casual when it comes to business, right? So I think making that decision was like maybe a good turning moment for you. You could have changed a lot of the mindset about running the business as a business, right? So you didn't talk about media buying. Is that something that you still do, or has that been outsourced or delegated already?
Yes, I guess I did go over that. The guy who I brought on as an ops guy to just sort of work underneath of our head of ops is also our media buyer.
Oh,
We have multiple hat roles because some of them don't require a lot of stuff.
yep.
But yeah, he's a media buyer, but the media buying setup is super easy. He just uploads ads, deletes them, raises and lowers budgets.
You have a very simplified structure, I guess. You talk about the script writing a lot. Is that script writing for the video ads, or is that also like the landing pages for the copies?
Landing pages were something we tested heavily in the beginning and then stopped focusing on as much because we had seen so much gain so quickly in testing landing pages. And then at a certain point, there's just diminishing returns, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So we were testing a whole lot of landing pages after that with no success at all. Nothing beat the control. So we started doing CRO tests, but then I realized, hey, this doesn't really make sense for me to do. So I stopped doing that for months until I talked about that CRO system. Yeah, I'm talking about ad scripts. That seemed to be our biggest lever, whether it was image ad briefs or video ad briefs. I believe that was our biggest lever and our competitive edge.
Right. I think a lot of people who are in e-commerce might think that the scripts, if they work with creators, they might think that the creators are the ones that maybe make the scripts. So obviously that's not true. It feels like the script writing part is the biggest leverage in your business. Can you kind of walk us through that script writing and how that script becomes an ad sort of process?
So I actually, talking about systems and such, I just made a very detailed SOP/checklist for how to make the perfect brief for us. But this is something that comes later on once you have a very deep understanding of what works for your brand, what your market wants, etc. So I don't really want to go too in depth on that. So it just wouldn't be super helpful for someone at the beginning.
Maybe just some high level, kind of what a script should look like, what should it contains. Yeah.
What a script should look like and what it should contain is found through testing. Most of our scripts are AI voiceovers with B-roll put over, not creators. How do we find out that that's what works best for us? Through lots of testing. We've done every single type of ad you can think of: podcast ads, creator ads, whatever. Like I can go through so many different things. And the way we found that is through testing. So I guess just a higher level thing would be test everything at the beginning, test every single type of script, and then we'll go into how to actually make the scripts. But there's a reason why we're going through this first. Test every type of script, make it in any type of way you want, and then see what works best and start doubling down on that, and then optimize the way you do that for your brand. Because there's a different way in doing scripts for creators. There's a different way in doing scripts for VO or AI voiceovers with B-roll. There's a different way to doing scripts for short form, for long form, for VSLs, for problem aware markets, etc. There's different things. I can give like a general framework, and I will, but there's different ways to do it. So you need to find what works by testing a shitload of stuff, and then double down on what's working, and then continually improving on what's working for you. This is why businesses compound, because they find what works for them and then they continually improve on that, right? And then you can't replace that. A competitor can't replace that because you've just spent 2 years optimizing the one thing that works great for your business, whereas someone else can, right? But anyways, let's get a little sidetracked. The way we make our video briefs is that we have a base video, which is the concept. So the concept will be like socks, or the concept could be like an angle or just like an ad format or just an idea. We have the base concept and there's a script written for that. And then there's 3 hooks written on that script just to give that maximal chances to work. But that's not super helpful because it's just a way of formatting a brief. There's a million ways to format a brief. There's a million ways to make a great ad. I think the ways of making a great ad just come down to direct response fundamentals. Like, do you have a strong headline that calls out the market that you want, that implies the benefit? Does your base video ad sell the product? Does it bring them from whatever awareness level they're currently at to product aware to get them onto the landing page? So I think the answer is just test a whole bunch of stuff, see what works, and then optimize in the way that you think is best, which is hard to do if you don't know what you're doing, where the whole direct response marketing fundamentals and deep understanding of direct response comes in. You will know what to do if you have that. And then through trial and error, there's things that I feel can be done instantly. And then there's things that just need to be done through testing and time. And that's one thing, testing and time. Got to see what works for the brand and then narrow down. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah. No, it does. It does. Because you're right. Like the script writing process will be different for every different ads. But the biggest thing is like, what you said at the beginning is that you've tested every type of, ad creative that's out there and found ones that actually work. So would you say like, if someone comes to you and had a struggling dropshipping store, e-commerce store, what do you commonly see like the problem is? Is it usually the product, or it's never the product? It's probably just they haven't done enough testing to find what works.
I'd say, well, okay, so it depends on the specific scenario, but I think that through just seeing people around me start and fail, just people who have been in e-commerce for a while and still failing or not doing the numbers that they want to do, stuff like that, I think it comes down to a few things. There are, of course, other scenarios. I think these are just the most common.
Sure.
And the first one's going to be a bit of a broken record. It's just not having a deep understanding of direct response marketing. That's one of them. Next is not learning from your mistakes for whatever reason, whether you're too arrogant to, whether you're too dumb to, which I don't think anyone's too dumb to. I think it comes down to arrogance or just,
awareness probably. Yeah.
But yeah, I think not having a deep level understanding of direct response marketing, not learning from your mistakes, not being willing to learn in general. I think those are the three biggest things. Then there's things like sticking with the wrong idea for too long or switching up too quickly. But the thing is, that comes from not learning from your mistakes either. Because in the beginning, it's hard to tell if it's too long or too short. But as you keep failing, if you learn from your mistakes, you'll know, okay, I'm running this too long. Okay, I'm running this too short. At the beginning, it's hard, though. I think most people tend, especially in the beginning, in the beginning, it's more common to, actually, that's hard to say. I'd say it's pretty even because I've seen people get screwed up on both of this, but I feel like a good way to stay out of the trap of like too long or too short is you don't want to keep hopping from idea to idea every like week or 2 weeks. Sorry, like every few days, because you do need time to like do a round of tests and then see, did this do bad? Did this do good? Did this do okay? Do we want to keep running it? Yes or no? If we do want to keep running it, how can we make it so much better? I'd give it like a 1 to 2 week period in terms of creating a new store. If you already have something established, you don't want to keep like every 6 months selling and starting a new brand, because then you don't get the beautiful effect of compounding, right? And then things that are too long, you don't want to run something that's break even for more than a month, unless there's a very high confidence idea behind why it will eventually work. The thing is, you can sell yourself any idea, right? Especially as a beginner, like, oh, a high confidence idea could be anything. If you're a beginner, don't run anything more than a month. That's just a great way to do it, which kind of goes against what I did. I kind of ran the same thing for 6 months, forcing it to work, but I don't think that's the way to go. I think a good rule of thumb is new tests should be run for a minimum of a week, a maximum of a month.
I guess kind of looking back, what other mistakes that now that you know that happened, and in the future you're like, well, those things I'm not gonna, well, hopefully not gonna make again, but we're all humans.
Okay, at the beginning, I was making a very good amount of money for that time, what I considered a very good amount of money. I mean, the first month we did 7 grand profit. The second month we did 45 grand profit. Like literally in the first 2 months, we already made what the average salary is here in Canada. And it wasn't even 2 months. It was a month and a week. So it started on a month and a half. So it started December 14th. At the time, I was processing with Shopify payments, and they had delays and holds and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And because of this, when I realized that I had no money in my bank account, or at least in this operating bank account, because like we just sold and stuff like that, right? In this operating bank account, I thought, okay, that's weird, but it's probably normal because Shopify payout time and stuff like that. So I'm just going to ignore it. I'm just going to make more money. That's my solution.
Yeah.
And this continued on for about 2 or 3 more months, where the account balance was almost always zero, or not zero because there were credit cards and stuff like that, but like it was very near to zero. And I just kept running the business like that, with the thinking being, oh, we'll just make more money. We'll just make more money. That'll fix it. It'll eventually solve itself. The lesson here boiled down, I'll add a little more info in a second, but the lesson here boiled down is like, don't let small problems become big, because that led to us losing out on about $100,000 to $150,000 of profit. Because what was happening is that I was not keeping track of my expenses. And I saw all this money coming in, so I was spending recklessly on the business. Just, this course is $10,000. I'm going to buy it because we're making so much money. It's going to make us more money. Oh, our VA's computer broke. We're going to go buy her a new MacBook Air, blah, 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 just spending recklessly and not tracking it. So the lesson is to not let small problems get big. And when there's a small problem, just kill it right away, especially when it's something like this, as serious as like financials, right? Because they will get big. They like I said, we could have made another $150,000 or so had I just been spending a little bit more within what the business could handle. So that was one thing. Another thing was you can't do everything at once. I would say through August to October was some of the, and I hate complaining and I hate like saying like, oh, poor me and stuff like that. Out of my business career, not life, I'm going to separate life and business. Although personal life did get affected by this as well too. Through August to October, so 2023 was the most stressful time by 100x I've had in business. I've only once ever thought about quitting business in the entire 4.5 years. And this was the one time where I thought of quitting business. Just, this isn't for me. I'm not doing this anymore. And the reason for this was it started with me trying to do way too many things at once. I was trying to balance the business with a whole bunch of personal stuff that was going on. So I had family flying in and I wanted to spend a lot of time with them. But at the same time, I had my business, which at the time had some very large problems just show up at the same time. So I was trying to grow the business. I was trying to fix these large problems and I was trying to spend a lot of time with my family, which saying it out loud doesn't sound crazy or anything. And it's not, it's a very good problem to have. It's a lot better than like being blown up somewhere. But like it was a lot going on and I was trying to manage all this at once.
Right.
And with all of that going on at once, I started making decisions that should not have been made. I was making decisions very quickly and I was being very reactive. And one bad decision leads to another bad decision because you try to fix that bad decision with another bad decision, and it just snowballed into a very, 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 very big problem in terms of a lot of areas.
Yep.
And it became very stressful. So the lesson that I learned from that is don't try to do everything. Like, don't try to be everything to everyone, but don't try to do everything at once. You cannot do that, which is kind of funny because my whole thing with business was just like focus on one thing to a point, like we did run multiple brands before, but like focus on one main thing, whether that be Facebook or whatever. Yeah, you can't do all these things at once and don't try. So that led to a lot of, just like I said, very impulsive decision making, which just made a huge downward spiral. And I kind of lost trust in myself as a business owner. And that was very hard to come back from. That's why it took like 3 months. It was only a 2-week period, but that 2-week period had effects for the next 2.5 months. So you lose confidence in yourself. Like I legitimately thought I was stupid. So again, it doesn't sound bad talking about it. This is why I don't really like complaining and shit like that, because it's just like it's such an insignificant problem overall in life. But like that was definitely very impactful in terms of my business life. Basically don't let so many things go on at once. Other things were just like growing pains, like hiring, like I said, the copywriter. That was a horrible hire. It was a growing pain. It wasn't really like a fundamental huge issue. And it wasn't something that like crippled the business, although it did slow us down a little bit. So hiring the wrong people, if you're very new to owning a business, it's going to be hard to filter out what a good person is or not. But hire people with more experience and pay a little more if you're hiring for the first time, where you don't need to like where you don't need to babysit them and then have another job. That's also when I brought this copywriter on in that time, where I was trying to teach him to, so it was interesting. More mistakes. December was our biggest month. We did 2.64 million.
Yep.
And after that, I wanted to hold scale. The profit on that was $425,000. And I'm here being at 21 at the time. My birthday is December 26th. So like 21, 22, making $500,000 in a month. And I didn't want that to end. So I stubbornly told my media buyer to hold scale, and we held scale very well in terms of revenue. But our profit went down because, scale's too high, ROAS goes down. So we were operating at a very low margin for most of 2024. And then about a month ago, I realized this is so stupid. What am I doing? And now we're just recovering from that. It's slow, but it's going in the right direction. Like our profit margins are up a lot now, but it's still hard to, I guess not hard to recover. It's just hard. I'm thinking as in the whole year's profit margin. But day to day, it's a lot better. Week to week, it's a lot better. I guess that's the only thing there. There's other things, but those were the things that stood out to me the most. I can, you know what, let me pull this up. This might take a second, but I used to do these weekly calls. I still do actually with one of my friends, actually a couple of my friends, and I go through all my failures and wins and stuff like that. A big win though was getting all the lower value tasks off my plate. So that was huge. Just separating growth and maintenance tasks and then getting rid of all the maintenance tasks, systematizing them and stuff. Failures, ignoring the small things in the name of growth. Went over that with you. Overthinking, letting my mind go idle / focus on the wrong things. So part of what I was talking about in summer, I was focusing on the wrong things very heavily. I said we had a big problem. Part of that big problem never was a problem. I just didn't realize it at the time. And I was spending a lot of time fixing that. Yeah, which is funny because the next 2 points on this list are trying to do too many things at once, making problems out of things that aren't actual problems. I feel like as entrepreneurs, and maybe just my personality in general, when there isn't any problem with stuff, I kind of make problems so that I can fix them.
100% resonate with that.
Yeah, something that I've like sort of ironed out of myself more so recently. But yeah, let me see. Yeah, man, I think that's all for the failures. I can go over some more wins and stuff, but those were all the big failures.
No, I 100% relate to some of the things you said. In terms of hiring, this is what I found, right? So at the beginning as an entrepreneur, we don't have a lot of resources. So we're like, well, here's my friend who I know and trust. Although he doesn't have the skills, whatever, things will work out. Let's just bring him on. Well, okay, let's spend a little bit more time. I think that kind of becomes a habit over time. Like you just hire these people who we don't have a lot of skills, but you as an entrepreneur have all the skills, right? So you can still bring the business forward. And you think, oh, so this can work, right? And then, you have people who don't have the skills, the attitude and the experiences. That kind of becomes a habit of hiring. But as you scale, that doesn't work anymore because now you cannot attend to 5, 6, 7 people who none of them had the skills, right? And you're like, you just kind of drown yourself out. It took me years actually to kind of realize that and say, well, now that I'm not like, who I am 5 years ago, where I don't have any resources or all that, and I need to hire completely differently. I think that was kind of my biggest thing is that, I don't hire anyone who don't have the experience and the skills already. Never. And let's kind of talk about the last topic I want to think, because in Taiwan, right, that's where I am. People who had business who are making money, they always think about, okay, I want to hold on to this business. Why would I want to sell this? Like, this is my baby kind of stuff. But obviously, in US and other parts of the world, it's very differently. Like people build business to sell. So I kind of want to talk about your vision for and why you kind of want to sell rather than keep growing it into bigger. I kind of want to, because I think you were very firm when I first met you. You're like, I'm going to build this, I'm going to sell this, and I'm going to do something else. Kind of walk me through that.
So there's a few reasons why people sell. I can go into why I want to sell in a sec, but I don't want to say this for everyone, but I know it's quite common where a lot of e-commerce businesses, especially if they're high growth and they're holding inventory, they don't pay themselves all that much, especially for the first year or two or during that higher growth period. If they even out within a year, then they're going to start paying themselves a lot more. For example, my friends that I told you that I used to work for, they're running a business about 2 times larger than mine. They have 4 companies total. It's about 2 times larger than mine. And at the beginning, their payouts were very minimal because they were in a very high growth phase and the margins were lower because you can optimize margins over time. Everyone thinks margins go down with scale, but if you're doing stuff right, they will go up with scale.
Yep.
Well, if you're doing things right and things weren't very optimal in the beginning, I guess it's a hard statement to say, but they can go up, they can go down, they can stay the same, whatever. But they went through that hyper growth phase. They weren't paying themselves much. Margins increased. And then also they just weren't growing as rapidly, right? So they were able to start taking larger distributions. So some companies can't do that. They're just hyper growth continually, and they don't pay themselves much. And the reason why they exit is because their brand is worth, let's say, $10 million, but they've paid themselves about $500,000, which doesn't sound horrible, but let's say that's over 5 years, and they're used to making, or like the exit, the $10 million exit over 5 years, what is that? That's $2 million a year. There's a big difference between $100,000 a year take home and $2 million.
$2 million, yeah.
You know what I mean? Which could have been cash flow if they weren't hyper growing. So that's one reason why people sell. Another reason why people sell is like, the way that I think about this is kind of just like time travel, if that makes sense. If I make $100,000 a month profit, that's an easy number, $1.2 million a year, and my business grows at X rate, and I know it'll continue growing at X rate, and I can sell for 5 million, I just saved about 4 to 5 years of my time.
Yep.
At the same time, you lose on the compounding, but if you don't think the business is going to grow all that much and just stay steady and you can get this large chunk of money, you kind of just time travel, as I said.
I like that analogy, time travel. Kind of, you basically go to the future.
Yeah. So I just made 5 years of income. Now I have 5 years of income to do whatever I want with.
Yep.
It's just like a fast forward, really. Another is just de-risking. Yes, let's say you make 1.2 million a year, but it's actually kind of a hard argument with those numbers because those are quite good. And I think anyone can agree with that. But yeah, it could be to de-risk. For me personally, it's de-risking and also time travel. De-risking as in I make a lot more than I need, that I spend, but at the same time, and I could continue my same lifestyle just off of savings and investments for 5-10 years. But I don't know. I want to de-risk a bit because it's my first large business where I own it. So I want to de-risk, but at the same time, I also want to time travel. I do think this company can continue growing, and I think it will. But the prospect of, or the idea of having 3 years of time saved and just being with like in cash in my bank, and then also de-risking, because if the business goes to zero, who cares? It's already sold. I have all the money from it. So I just made X amount of profit, and then I just sold for that on top of that. Yeah. So my thing is just to sort of time travel and get out of the first business. Also, another reason to sell, which is partly why, because we have a very high refund rate. And this is before when I was saying, oh, it's so stupid if you have 5 years of experience in a business and you move to a better vehicle. Or it's so stupid to move from a business you have 5 years of experience to a same or lower vehicle. However, if it's a much better vehicle, it makes sense. I think there are better businesses than mine. I think my business is very good. I think having the refund rate high is a fundamental flaw, though. Is it navigatable? Yes. I mean, we've done well over $1 million of profit with this business. And for a 22-year-old, I can find a lot of things that I can do with $1 million. But could it be better? Yes, there are better vehicles. An example would be my friend's business, which is one I started. But anyways, it's a much better vehicle. So it's a combination of those things. De-risking, much better vehicles are available, and time traveling.
That's very good reason. So you can take the money, the windfall from this, and kind of get into the next kind of time machine, I guess.
The next business, I think I will run very long term. So I want to be very selective with the business. And then the first few months, if it's not, if it doesn't turn into, so like this business was perfect in my mind until I found out those refund rate. That's something you can find out through research, yes, but it's also something you have to find out through running the business. You can't you can predict, but there's things that show up, right?
Yeah.
And the grass is always greener on the other side. Every business has problems, but it's just like, what problems do you want? What problems do you not want? I don't really want a high refund rate problem. But anyways, for example, like my friend's business, it has multiple SKUs. That's a problem, right?
Yeah.
But it's a much better problem than a 20% refund rate. I don't have a 20% refund rate, but like just as an example. The next business I want to run, I saw the work of compounding. If you stay in the same business, it just continually gets better and better if you're doing it right. So the next business, I don't want to quote unquote time travel. I want to hold it for multiple years.
Yeah.
One other reason why I want to sell it's not I guess you could say as logical of a reason, but I'm 22 years old and I have had an idea of what I want my life to look at 22 for quite a while.
Yep.
And one thing that I would like to be is like just a cash multimillionaire, which selling this would make me. I think it's just a cool life achievement. Looking back when I'm 100 years old or something, talking to my grandkids saying, yeah, I became a cash multimillionaire at 22. Who can say that? Not a lot of people. So.
I mean, still thinking about it, it's very, very crazy what you've done so far. That's just a lot of achievements. Well, congrats, Josh. I'm sure you're going to go on and do super great things. If you do ever do exits, let me know. I'll join your party.
Yeah, man, we're actually listing. We're listing by the end of next week. So.
Oh, you are? Okay. Is that through a private listing or is that through one of those bigger sites?
Website closers.
Oh, website closers. Got it. All right. I hope that turns out super well. Just keep me updated. Josh, thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge and experiences in this. I've learned a lot. I wrote down a bunch of notes. I'm going to go back and try to kind of type them out later on. Thank you so much, Josh.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. If you ever have any questions or if you want to do a part 2 or anything, I'm always happy to. Schedule's busy, but I can always make time.